Completely and totally understand very different classes of knives, but a lot of people have asked me to essentially compare the Fibrox line to higher end knives and give them an idea of whether they should spend the extra money or not and help them decide on which knife brand to essentially get. Let's talk about similarities. They're both knives, they're both sharp, they both have similar cutting angles, 16 degrees, 15 degrees. That's essentially where the differences begin. The Shun knife is a handmade forged knife. The Victorinox is a stamped machine-made knife. The Shun has a full tang all the way down. The Victorinox, a lot of people don't know this, does not have a full tang, even though it's a great knife. The tang ends right there, roughly, and the handle is plastic formed around it. This handle is wood. What that means is that if you abuse this knife, if you're really, really working hard at something, there is a chance, and actually a pretty real chance, that this blade is going to flip into your face. Just an important thing to sort of consider. Aside from that, they both use good quality steel, but Shun uses a VG10 steel, which is essentially the gold standard of knife makers. This guy does not. The difference is that this is a softer steel. It's about 58 hardness. That's a harder steel, 61 hardness. Pros and cons to both. The pros are that this is much, much more resilient to losing its edge. So as you cut, by design, you get little bends as you're cutting just by how cutting works. It's why we suggest using a end grain cutting knife. It's why we say don't cut on glass or on ceramic, etc. But eventually you're going to need to resharpen and rehone your blade. It's going to take a lot longer to do it with this in terms of when you're going to need to than with this because it's softer. The opposite side of that coin is if you're abusing your knives, if you're causing damage to your knife, if you're using it on, let's say, steel or a glass cutting board, if you're doing things like that, this is just going to bend out of shape because it's softer. The energy can dissipate into bending the steel. This can't bend as easily, so it's going to chip a little bit. If you're not abusing your knives, that doesn't really matter. If you're using a nice cutting board, if you're not throwing it at plates, if you're not throwing it in the dishwasher, throwing it in the sink, you don't need to worry about that. Every once in a while you hear someone complaining about how their Shun got chips in it. That's user error. It's not the actual knife. It's just people complaining about their poor knife skills. That's an important thing to consider. If you work in an industrial setting, if you work in a kitchen, in a restaurant, and you abuse your knives, you throw them in the dishwasher, this is probably your best choice. It's cheap, it's functional, it's very, very sharp, and it's not going to sort of break in half when you throw it at a wall. Other than that, though, let's discuss the next few differences. This is not just one piece of stainless steel like this is. This is steel that's stamped, and that's the end of it. It's all just one piece of steel. This, on the other hand, is the VG10 steel, which then has 32 layers of essentially stainless steel wrapped around it. What that means is, aside from getting this gorgeous Damascus finish on the bottom half of the blade, it's extremely resilient to stains, to pitting, to rust, things like that, just by definition of having all that stainless steel wrapped around it. On top of that, this has that really nice hammered finish on it, which looks great, but it also stops vacuums from forming, which in terms of slicing, it helps you be able to go through in a single motion, which stops you from getting that weird little ladder finish on the meat from sawing in half. This is 8 inches, this is 9 inches, so you have 1 more inch of being able to continue through without needing to go forward and continue through. Gives you nicer cuts. And while they both have lifetime warranties, this is free sharpening for life. All Shuns have that, which means that on a 9-inch blade like this, which would be at a reputable sharpener, about $5 per inch to sharpen, it would be $45 to sharpen this normally. It's free. You ship it to Shun, they check it out. If there are any defects, they will send you a brand new knife. If there are no defects, they will just sharpen it and send it back to you for free. It's a great deal. What would I say? If you want to get a piece of jewelry for your house, for your kitchen, the Shun Premier is, I think, the most gorgeous knife out there. It's beautiful, it looks great, it's extremely sharp, it has free sharpening, etc., etc. If you want a more budget-friendly option, would I suggest this? I would suggest this only if you are essentially working, again, in a kitchen environment where you, by definition, abuse your knives. If you work at home, if you work deliberately, if you have good knife skills or you're trying to learn good knife skills, things like that, this is actually not the best deal for a knife. The best deal for a knife, in my mind, would be the Shun Sora, because while it costs a little bit more off the bat, number one, you get free sharpening, which means that all that price difference is lost, it's moot, it doesn't matter. But number two, all the benefits of this you essentially get with the Shura. You get a full tang, you get VG10 steel, you get it clad in stainless steel, you get lifetime sharpening for free, etc., etc. But it's a cheaper price point and it's solid. So if you have any other questions, feel free to let me know. I'm going to leave links down below. And otherwise, I will talk to you very, very soon.